Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Dean, and it's a pleasure for me to speak yet again with Toby Klein Greenwald about her next exciting theatrical project. Before we get the conversation going, I'll remind you that Toby Klein Greenwald is an award-winning writer and journalist and editor-in-chief of WholeFamily.com, as well as the artistic director of Raise Your Spirits Theater. In a matter of days and weeks, depending on where you are in Israel, and we are recording in 2022, Toby will present her next stage production, and this time it is the legendary Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is made famous on Broadway, and Toby's theater company presented it 21 years ago. And it's the famous Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with music by Andrew Lloyd Webber and lyrics by Tim Rice. For tickets and information, just visit raiseyourspirits.org/tickets. Again, that's the Raise Your Spirits website, raiseyourspirits.org/tickets. Shows in Gush Etzion are scheduled for November 27th and 30th. And in Jerusalem, shows are scheduled for December 4th and 7th. And rounding out, shows will be in Beit Shemesh. One show, the last show, will be on December 11th. So you know where to go to grab your tickets and enjoy the show. raiseyourspirits.org/tickets. All right, Toby Klein Greenwald, so good to see you.
So great to see you again.
So 21 years ago, tell me what that was like when you first presented this legendary musical.
Okay, we began it, a group of women began it, really during this terrible intifada, just to keep ourselves busy. That was the original idea. And a friend of mine, Sharon Katz, sent out an email, we're putting on a show, and I volunteered to be the director, and Arlene Cherta volunteered to be the choreographer, and we got together, about 100 women came to auditions, and we thought that, and we went out almost every night because almost nobody was traveling on the roads to Jerusalem from our area because it was dangerous. And there were several women who we knew who had recently been murdered by terrorists on our road, Esther Alvin and Sarah Blaustein. And Sarah Blaustein was also a personal friend of a number of the women who joined the project. And it was really just, the idea was, that's what we called it, Raise Your Spirits, because that was the whole idea. And I said, let's call it the Raise Your Spirits Summer Stock Company, because I thought that was really cool, because we'll only perform in the summer and then we'll be done with it. We actually kept that name till 2010 when we became an official Amuta nonprofit. And then the Amuta I was outvoted. They said we should change it to Raise Your Spirits Theater because that sounds more professional. So that was our original idea. And when we began it, we thought we would do 2 performances, maybe 3. And after the 3rd performance, first of all, we called it Joseph Mania. Women came on bulletproof buses from all over Israel. And I remember when the scenery director came to me and she said, the black backdrop that we bought the cheapest material and it fell apart. Should we buy cheap material again, or should we buy the more expensive material? And with an insane leap of faith, I said, buy the more expensive material. And since then, about 50,000 women have seen our shows. And you can imagine we went through many, 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 many black backdrops since then. So what we decided to do then was to write our own original works. And our various women in our group and various composers, we've written works on Esther, Noah, Ruth, Dvorah, the daughters of Tzlofchad, Abraham and Sarah. Rebecca was the one that we did last year. And now we decided this was originally going to be in honor of our 20th anniversary, but because of Corona, Rebecca was postponed. So it's our 21st anniversary. We said, let's bring Joseph back because that was the first one. And why did we do Joseph? A lot of us knew Joseph. I knew it because I just happened to discover it when I was 24 and I fell in love with it. And I said, someday I will direct this, But at the time I was a Tanakh teacher, which I love doing also. And, but of course, Joseph is Tanakh. And there were other women who had done it at camp. They did it in school. There was a film on it. They were familiar with it. And we said, we live in the biblical heartland. Let's do something from the Bible, something from the Tanakh. And we continued to write and produce shows from the Tanakh. And so this is a returning. We actually have a few women who were in our shows, in addition to me, that I was the director, then I've continued to be the director for the last 21 years. But our music director, for example, Elisheva Savir, she was a teenager then, and she played one of the brothers. And now she's a very accomplished, diplomaed, successful musical director who also has her choirs have won awards. And I said to her, how would you like to be a brother on stage again? And she said, okay. So we gave her the same role of the brother God, or as we call him, God with an A. And so she has the double role of both music director and performing on stage again after 21 years. There are a few other, Felicity Aziz, who is on our Amuta, on our board. She performed then. She's on stage now. Tammy Rubin, our head producer and our chairwoman, who was involved then behind the scenes, and she's been involved for 21 years. She's on stage also as a brother. Felicity's a brother. And we have another more silent partner of our Amuta, who's just a very generous donor and helping from behind the scenes, and that's Judith Spitz, who has also been involved for 20 years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I love that bit about the black backdrop. So one of the things that's on the that's part of what Raise Your Spirits Theater often does, and it happens with this production as well, is that you bill it as, I want to say it correctly, as in English, presented in English with Hebrew surtitles. So for someone who has not yet gone to a Raise Your Spirits Theater production, what does that mean that it's presented in English with Hebrew surtitles?
The play is done in English, but we project above the stage, both in English and in Hebrew. They're called surtitles because it's above the stage, not below the stage. And the reason we project the English lyrics is to help women who are hard of hearing. And the reason we project the Hebrew lyrics is so Israelis can also come and enjoy it. And I'd like to say that we are so honored that these Hebrew lyrics were written by Ehud Manor of blessed memory, who was a renowned Israeli songwriter. And I contacted his son, of course, to license the rights, the legal rights to use their surtitles, his father's surtitles. And he was very happy to hear from me again, because a number of years ago, I also did Joseph in Hebrew with a boys group. And he remembered us. He lives in Tel Aviv. He's a lawyer, and he's in charge of his father's estate. So it's very exciting to us that this Hebrew was written by someone who was such an exemplary songwriter and renowned in Israel.
Right, good. And it's very inclusive. You know, the fact that it's different languages and whatever a person's level of hearing or not hearing is, so more people can enjoy, and that's great. You mentioned some of the returning cast members. So one of the things that is typical for Raise Your Spirits Theater productions is that the women on stage are such a wide range, and this, I think, is one of your widest ranges. You told me before that it's from age 7 up to age 71. So this is incredible. It's
age 70.
It's a great outlet for so many women of all ages.
Well, traditionally we always had a wide range of ages, but during Corona, also before Corona, we kind of raised the age of the young people who were participating. And during Corona, we had no choice because we had to follow the rules of the Ministry of Health and of the local community center and of the halls we performed in. And they said you could only use their facilities if you were vaccinated. And I think it was from the age 12 and up that you could be vaccinated. So that was an additional reason that we did not have younger people then. I also want to mention where people come from, because we're not just from Gush Etzion. We have women from Gush Etzion, from Jerusalem, from Mavo Beitar, from Beit Shemesh. Our choreographer, Maayan Allen, who I've wanted to work with for years, and I'm so happy I finally had the opportunity. She comes from Beit Shemesh. We have a number of women and girls from Beit Shemesh, some of the daughters of the women, and they figure out their carpool. And there's just two other people I really wanted to give honor to and mention since they're so essential to this show. And that's my assistant director, who's also a co-producer, and that's Shayna Levine-Hefetz. Could not do this without her. And the other one is Heather Gelb, who is just like you, Heather. It must be something about the name. She's absolutely wonderful. And there's no way that I can mention 52 names here, but those are the ones that really I have to get in.
Can we talk about a certain resident from Alon Shvut? I think you know who I'm talking about, because we're talking about cast members coming from far and wide. So tell me about the Alon Shvut cast member who definitely came from a long distance.
I'll try to get through this without crying because it's a very emotional story. There's a family from Pakistan who for a number of years started learning Judaism long distance. And you can imagine what it's like to live as a Jew in Pakistan. And they managed to escape Pakistan, and they ended up in Israel, and they ended up in Efrat. And we hosted them for a meal on, I think it was Shavuot. And lovely, lovely family, parents, 2 boys, a girl. And they're in the process of going through conversion. And they have a daughter, 14, whose name is Cherish. I asked the mother, and I asked her, does she sing and dance? And she said, well, she sings, but she doesn't dance. And I said, have her send me a recording of her singing, which when I passed it on to our audition team, we were all crying. She sent one song that has a line from Shema Yisrael in it. And the other song she sent was Hatikva. And to hear this Pakistani girl who fled to be in a Jewish state sing Hatikva in her strong accent, it just blew us all away. And she has a beautiful voice. So we cast her, and she came to rehearsal. And at the first rehearsal, or the second rehearsal, when the choreographer was there, Maayan, the mother said that she can sing, but she can't dance. And she said, well, let's see. And she invited her to join the dance. And Cherish happens to be one of our best dancers. And her mother came in the beginning, she would sit there and watch, and I saw how emotional she was getting, and I thought, well, where was she going to dance in Pakistan? And she didn't have a JCC. Right. She didn't have a Jewish school. She didn't have classes to go to. And it's like, the old joke, do you know how to play the piano? I don't know. I never tried. So the moment she started dancing, she revealed herself to be a wonderful dancer.
Wow.
So and she was obviously embraced by the whole cast, because in general, our casts are always very embracing and very accepting. And
yes. No, speaking of your cast, we have to talk about one of my favorite cast members. I think she played Bilha when I saw her in Rebecca, your stage production of Rebecca. And now she has the lead. So, and she also just turned 17 years old. So tell us a bit about your theatrical history with the great Maya Favorman.
Okay, Maya has been with us from the age of 9. And so I guess this is her, I can't keep track, 4th or 5th production, maybe 6th. And she, very early on, she revealed herself as not only very talented, but a very sweet, wonderful, helpful person. And I always tell parents, when I compliment them on their children, I say, talent comes from God, but values and behavior, that comes from the home. That comes from you. And she's a go-to. In addition to being very talented, she's such a go-to. First of all, she's from the next generation, so if we get stuck on something technical, she knows how to solve it. She helps with the music. It was such typecasting, because like my philosophy of directing is to really, really work hard to get the casting right. And I actually heard this in an interview once by the director of To Kill a Mockingbird. I remember I watched director's interview, and he said something like, I try to cast wisely and then I get out of their way. So it's not that I don't give them direction, but I think that if you cast well and you let the actor bring out his natural personality and talent and connection to the character, then it makes your work easier. And Maya is such a Joseph. She glows on stage. She sparkles on stage. She's always smiling, except when, in the scenes when she's
Yes.
not supposed to be smiling.
She's
And
always smiling.
with her long curls, she looks like
Yes.
Donny Osmond. No, she's absolutely wonderful, and she helps in many, many different ways. So for me, it's such a thrill to have her in this lead role now, and it was like a no-brainer.
Oh, fantastic. I love everything you said about Maya. I would also like to talk about Gabby Shine and getting her family also involved and her wonderful daughter Haleli. So how did Gabby fit in and her daughter Haleli?
So I have been a fan of Gabi Shine for many years. I've seen her in many other productions of other theater groups. She's also in a production that I direct. She's one of the newer actresses in the production Mikveh the Musical that I co-produce and direct. And I saw her in a different theater group's production many months ago. And I knew that she had a daughter called Haleli, who is very talented with Down syndrome, because I was a Facebook friend with her, and I saw, and she would post photos and short videos of Haleli. So I went backstage at one of a different show that she was in, and I said to her, I said, we have children.
Now, a different show that Gabby was in, or
Gabby
Gabby
and
Haleli?
Gabby was in.
Okay.
Gabby was in.
Okay.
And I said, listen, I know you have a daughter, Haleli. How would you like to? I would like you to be in our show, Joseph, and I'd love it if she would be in our show also. And Gabby was thrilled, of course. And Haleli she had a bat mitzvah recently that was to end all bat mitzvahs, an incredible production.
Nice.
And Gabby, Haleli she dances, she acts, she's very sweet. And I have to tell you, here's a part where I get emotional again. I think that as much as Haleli has gotten out of this, I think that the children and the teenagers and the adults also who are in the cast, I think they've gotten even more out of it, because it's one thing you could talk about inclusiveness and you could have meetings on it and you read articles on it, but there's nothing like firsthand experience. And she's lovely, she's talented, she's warm, she's sweet. Everybody loves her. And if she sometimes needs a little bit of help, then with that, they don't have to be told. Don't make a big deal out of it, and they kind of step in, the teenagers, and any kid. Look, any of us who've raised children or been teachers, we know that very lively children, on the one hand, they make for wonderful actors. On the other hand, sometimes, it takes a little bit of, you gotta kind of also keep them under control. And it's good that we have different ages, and you'll see sometimes older teens helping with the younger kids. And you see also, that, like I say, again, the same thing with adults, because people are people, and any cast, and everyone has a story. Going back for a moment to Haleli, that we're so happy we're performing at the Shalva National Center, because we think Shalva's work is wonderful. And we have two other cast members, including my assistant director, Shayna, who have adopted Down's children, boys. And so the fact that we're performing at Shalva is very meaningful to us, because it also means that the rental fee, et cetera, that we're helping to support Shalva.
Yes. Shalva, for people that don't know, you could call it an Israeli startup. There was nothing like Shalva before it came along. It was started by the family of a very, very special needs boy, and they made this Shalva like a respite for not just the children with special needs, all kinds of special needs, including young adults, but for the families, so that the families also have a lot of their needs met as well, and Shalva for them as well. So I think there's a way Shabbatot for the kids every so often. So it's definitely a whole family kind of
and they also have, of course, the programs. Haleli has been in their programs for years. So it's really like closing a
Yeah,
circle there.
yeah. So it's such a legendary musical. As we wrap up, we need to at least talk about the Joseph story. I mean, Joseph is my favorite person from Tanakh from the Torah for a variety of reasons, and this is the time of year where we're learning the Torah portion of the week is all about Jacob's family and his favored son Joseph. So, if you tell us how the Joseph story personally touches you and also audiences that you hear from.
I think, first of all, everyone grows up in some kind of family unit. And I think that what we see here, all of Sefer Bereshit, we're learning about the archetypes. We see the struggles they had. We see things were not always easy. You came to Rebecca last year. You see with Rebecca also the two sons, and so I think first of all, Sefer Bereshit is very much about family, and I think we have to look at the dumiyot, the personalities in the Chumash, in the Torah, and say, what issues did they have to struggle with? Sibling rivalry, jealousy, the love of a parent, a husband who had more than one wife, like you mentioned, Bilhah, that, Yaakov had four wives, actually, and two of them were still alive at the time of the story. So, by the way, we actually cast two women as Bilhah and Zilpah to give them a presence for a change that probably no other Joseph production in the world has ever done. We don't change, obviously, we don't change the lyrics or the music, but their characters on stage. And you have to, I think it's a sign, it connects out like our website, wholefamily.com. You have to work. You have to work on yourself. You have to work to make your family cohesive. The brothers, we know from later, the Shvatim, that they were developed they had different portions in Eretz Yisrael. They had different personalities. They had different tasks in Am Yisrael. And the Joseph story is something else that I wrote about this many, many years ago in a column, where what is the symbolism of his many-colored coat? And the symbol, I see the connection between the rainbow, the colored coat, the breastplate that the Kohen wore, which was 12 different colored stones. And I think all these images are a sign that Am Yisrael we have a very, I know that the phrase that's used, I think mostly in America, is we have a very wide tent, but it's like we have to reach out to each other and remember that we are all connected. And I think that is part of the message here. And at the end of the story, I mean, that part of the end of the story, of course, the end of the story, the brothers do tshuva. The brothers recognize that they made a mistake. And Judah comes and he says, when Benjamin is sitting there in chains, he said, take me, leave him. And this is very powerful. And that's when Joseph knows his brothers have recognized their mistake and they've done tshuva. And that's when he reveals himself to them. And that's one of the that's a very emotional high point. Yes. I always cry that part when he says, I see my brothers now, and he goes forward and they hug each other and he gives that final hug to Benjamin. And this is a family reconciling. And the world is full of so much pain and so much disconnect. And there are so many families that are fractured. And there are groups of people and communities that are fractured. And this is a sign, repair your fractures, whether it's a microcosm, one-on-one, a family, an extended family, your community, your world. Repair your fractures. I think that is perhaps the strongest message of Joseph.
Yeah, beautifully put, beautifully put. This is such a pleasure to talk with you a little bit about this latest production, Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoats, and theater director Toby Klein Greenwald. I just want to remind everybody to grab your tickets. You can buy them online at raiseyourspirits.org/tickets. That's where you can get your tickets, you, your friends, all the ladies in your life. Come down. If you're in Jerusalem, you'll probably see me and my co-producer there. So we're looking forward to seeing this indeed. Thank you so much for our conversation today. Toby Klein Greenwald.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a pleasure.